for the hardest-hitting show in talk radio. The true progressive voice since 2012. This is Southpaws.
And welcome to Southpaws on the Pacifica Radio Network. We are the leaders of the revolution. My name is Darren Gibson, and I'm your co-host.
And I'm Katy Steele.
And Jack Prince is going to be off for the next couple of weeks. He's enjoying a well-deserved vacation, so Jack will be returning on the April 16th edition of Southpaws. And by the way, we are recording this episode on Friday, April 2nd, 2021. We've got quite a few topics to discuss today. We got to talk about the George Floyd trial, not George Floyd, but the Derek Chauvin trial in the murder of George Floyd. That's the better way to put it, because that's exactly what happened. We have a Hammer Time segment this week, a double Hammer Time. One of them, a very familiar name, plus we've got a lot of updates to pass along to you. In the meantime, before we get started, a couple of reminders. You can follow us on social media by going to facebook.com/Southpaws Radio Show. You can follow us on Twitter at Southpaws Radio. You can follow us on Tumblr at southpawsradioshow.tumblr.com. You can follow us on YouTube by doing a search for Southpaws Radio. You can become a patron of the show by going to patreon.com/Southpaws Radio. You can listen to the show anytime you like at Spreaker.com or at Stitcher.com. Just do a search for Southpaws there. We're on Apple Podcasts. Just do a search for Southpaws. Once you found our logo, you found us. We send links to our weekly episodes to our Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, and YouTube accounts. You can listen to us on Global Community Radio Channel 1 every Saturday night at 11 Eastern. And you can listen to us on great Pacifica stations, including KCEI in Taos, New Mexico, KZGM in Kabul, Missouri, WOOL Bellows Falls, Vermont, and KEPJ San Antonio, Texas. So make sure you listen to us there as well. Please help support your local Pacifica station by donating your time or your money or both. They can always use the help there. I guess we should probably start out with the Derek Chauvin trial, because there have been some pretty big revelations that have come out in that. Most recently, on Thursday, one of Derek Chauvin's supervisors came out and said that the chokehold that he was put on, the knee restraint, should have been let go once he was done resisting, quote-unquote resisting. Yeah. Because he wasn't resisting. I'm sorry, he wasn't.
It's so sketchy to me how police are allowed to have that much discretion. Like, that's the thing I really don't get. When we were arrested for protesting, the first set of charges that were handed down were like felonious, like assaulting a police officer type charges. And we literally had been trained when we got arrested to cross our legs and cross our arms behind our back and not to make any movements that could be construed as resisting. And that's exactly what we did. And still, that's how they started the charges. And they ended up dropping those and rebringing just refusing to obey or something like that. But this happens every time they arrest black people, I swear. And they just use this visual of a black person in handcuffs. And that has been used enough times that it's just translating in a lot of people's minds to resisting, whether they're standing there peacefully or not.
And I think the reason that the harsher charges are brought about in the first place is to scare people from
absolutely
being active politically.
And look at how many times that people are being active politically and they're being charged or arrested, and it is only for their crimes against the police. That's it. There was no other crime involved except maybe fleeing or eluding or disobeying. Or no, these are not written by legislature. These are not laws that are written by legislature. So when you've got your Republicans doing their press conferences talking about how they shouldn't have to follow Whitmer's orders because these are not laws written by the legislator, can somebody explain to them that if we have to listen to the police officers ever about anything that is not a written law, and if they're not citing the law, then I shouldn't have to obey, right? Isn't that how that makes sense to me.
But Republicans are the law and order party, but only the law and order
that they want to follow, right? And it's only the people that they want to be, held accountable for not following it. So,
yeah. So here's some updates. I have this. This is Grace Hauk and Yadea Nancy Bragg writing for USA Today newspaper. This is dated April 2nd. A Minneapolis police supervisor told jurors that the officers who subdued George Floyd, who died after an officer knelt on his neck for more than 9 minutes, could have stopped restraining tactics once Floyd stopped resisting. Again, resisting in quotes, air quotes, if you can't see it on radio. But David Pluger, a sergeant who had authority to review use of force complaints in the precinct where former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin worked, said, quote, "When Mr. Floyd was no longer offering up any resistance to the officers, they could have ended their restraint." End of quote. Chauvin is charged with second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. Floyd died in police custody on May 25, 2020, after Chauvin, who is white, pinned his knee against Floyd's neck for more than 9 minutes. Jurors returned to the courtroom Friday morning for more testimony in the murder trial. So far, jurors have heard from 17 witnesses, several who witnessed the death of George Floyd. And some of those witnesses have cried on the stand describing their attempts to intervene on his behalf, including teenagers.
All right. So I'm gonna make a call right now. And some people are gonna say that this is, off base, and it's probably gonna be the people that have no knowledge of history, haven't done any reading, and don't know any of the real reasons we got here. But I'm just going to make the assumption right now that in about 25 to 50, probably 50 years, when it can legally be revealed, the CIA paid that man to kill George Floyd. They did. He's going to do some time. It's not going to be a lot. But what they really want to do is set off a race war this summer, and it's about to start. Look at the timing of him getting arrested. Look at the timing of him getting killed, the timing of the video going viral, the timing of the trial, all of this stuff coming out. Go back and look at history. Look at the different things that we've been in this situation before. I can't sit back and pretend like these are all just sporadic events, because it seems very well engineered, in my opinion.
I don't think he'll serve any time.
You don't? It's possible he won't.
Take a look. Let's look at history. Rodney King.
Right.
Really, through all
and it
of
is
history.
getting more extreme. You're right, and they're getting off. So it's very possible he won't. But I think just to save the system, he'll get a small amount of time. And it won't be justice. And that's going to be the problem, is they're going to say, but we gave you justice. And people are going to go, if this guy goes and serves 4 years, how is that justice, right?
Justice to me is life, no parole.
Right. That will never happen. And I think that's why we're going to end up in that middle situation where they give him time, because he's got the chief of police is set to come testify against him. He is on the witness list for the prosecution.
Yeah.
So I just don't see how you can uphold a system of policing if you let this guy off after the chief testifies against him. So that's why I think he will get convicted and he will get a small amount of time. But I think people are still going to be rightfully enraged. And that's what they want. And as long as they keep dropping these stories of, the 13-year-old last night getting shot by police in Chicago. And I'm not even saying that I'm in a world where I don't know how much of these things are just happening because that's the world we live in and how many are actually probably engineered. But I would assume there's a mix of both.
It's what we've mentioned before we started recording, is a white supremacy.
Oh, yeah. White supremacy is the basis of all of it. Every story we're going to talk about today, every story we talked about last week, if you see the big picture, you can't unsee it. But we've got to help each other see it, because this is so bad how often we play into it,
Other updates regarding the Derek Chauvin trial. Seth Bravender, a paramedic with the Hennepin County EMS service, and his partner paramedic Derek Smith testified about the medical aid they provided Floyd. Smith told jurors he thought Floyd was dead when he arrived on scene, because he was. They said there was no blood pumping through his body.
They knew this guy. Like, it's not like these guys didn't have a relationship. This cop knew George Floyd.
Floyd's girlfriend, 45-year-old Courtney Ross, gave jurors a first glimpse of his personal life. discussing how they met and acknowledging drug use was part of their relationship.
Did you listen to this? I don't mean to interrupt you, but I have to interrupt you.
I can't watch any of it because every time that the defense says George Floyd died of drug use and pre-existing health conditions, I want to take a brick and throw it right through the TV screen.
Yeah. So I listened to her. Yesterday because I normally can't either, but when I listened to it, it was just almost all her. They weren't asking too many questions. They were letting her talk. Mm-hmm. I just can't get over how all of this ties together. I mean, the opioid crisis, like everything, even the religion aspect of it. The fact that they met at, I think it was a Salvation Army where he was a security guard.
Yeah,
where
he asked her to pray with him.
Everything
right?
about this story pulls together all of these issues we're dealing with right now and all the different ways they're dividing us and all of the things we're all struggling with, right? I mean, addiction. If you haven't been through it, you know somebody who has. You might not talk about it because it's shameful, but you do. It was somebody close to you and you know what happens. Homelessness, same thing. If you haven't been through it, you know somebody who has. This wasn't the case 20 years ago. It is now.
Yeah.
So I think hearing those stories from her, it could be any one of us. It could be any one of our brothers, our sisters, our kids. People are not going to be okay with this guy getting 4 years. They're not.
Exactly. Also on Thursday, the prosecution played police body cam footage from inside the ambulance that Floyd was taken to the hospital in and recordings of phone conversations between officers concerning use of force. I wonder if that was obviously not on a unrecorded line like
right.
we have in Grand Rapids.
Right, but I'm sure there were plenty of Discord and all the other different apps that you have that you can WhatsApp chats because that's what they just found out in GR2 that the cops were using all of those so that none of their conversations were recorded.
It was the Michigan State Police that was using that.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's kind of the updates with the Derek Chauvin trial at this point. And like I said, I am not hopeful of Chauvin serving any time at all.
There won't be justice. There's too many people that are already supporting and defending him, and we're just being set up to... I mean, the police and the military are prepared for this. I just hope people see. I know they all think they want to go hit these streets as soon as this trial ends, and I just think it's a really bad idea. I think we've got to strategize in different ways than we did the last time because they are prepared for that.
Absolutely.
It's got to be different this time.
Yeah, it absolutely has to be. You can't do it the day of the verdict because they're ready for it.
Right. And you can't just go and think you're going to burn down a building. They got too much money. They'll put a new one there in 10 seconds. It means nothing.
Yeah. But they will put you in jail forever.
Exactly.
Because in their eyes, property damage is violence, and
right.
it is not.
Exactly.
It's something we've stressed on this show for a long time.
One of the most important points.
Oh, God. Do we want to continue talking about the trial, or should we
Probably
move on?
not. We should probably move on.
Yeah, let's go on to another topic. We have an update on a story that we've been discussing for the last several weeks, and it has to do with the Oprah interview that she had with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. And there's been a lot of fallout from everything that has happened, starting originally with Piers Morgan, who decided to get on the air of Good Morning Britain, which he co-hosted at the time, and said that he didn't believe a single word that came out of Meghan Markle's mouth and has just been dogging her for years. And I can tell you why he's been dogging her for years is because Piers wanted to sleep with her and never got the chance to. She blew him off. She probably turned him down. Because this is what men do when women turn them down. Yep,
because they have to have the control. They got to have it. And you don't get to decide what I get to do with my penis, lady. Yeah. That's literally their attitude sometimes.
And by the way, no proof of that, but that's my belief.
Oh,
that's my opinion.
It seems real clear to me what's going on there. And the British media just this morning, it might have been in the American media. I can't remember where I read this story.
Yeah.
But it was discussing Meghan's. She had said that they got married 3 days before the actual wedding.
Oh, yes.
That they did their vows alone with the Archbishop in the back.
And the Archbishop said, no, that didn't happen. No.
Well, and that's the thing. If you actually read the article, which the headline says, makes it sound like she lied on the Archbishop. Come on.
But that's not what happened.
I know. If you read the story, it actually says, the Archbishop says that he did have many meetings before the official ceremony, but he only signed the legal document at the official ceremony. And if he would have done otherwise, he would have been breaking very serious laws. So what he was really saying is that he can't tell you he married them 3 days before the ceremony because it's illegal.
But he did, so yeah.
But let's make her look like a liar because you broke the law, Father.
And yeah, exactly. And of course, she's a woman of color, so
right. Nobody's going to believe her anyway. It's all exactly how they want it to work.
Yeah, our good friend Greg Palast, who is an investigative reporter, he has appeared a lot on Pacifica Radio, including this very show. The author of The Best Democracy Money Can Buy sent out an email a few weeks ago ripping on Piers Morgan. Here's what he wrote. Recidivist criminal, conman, creep, liar. I'm sure you've guessed I'm talking about Piers Morgan, the alias of Piers Moron, who's been given a few days off for spewing vicious, inhuman comments about Meghan Markle's suicidal depression. I say a few days off because British and U.S. media moguls' love affair with Morgan has kept this racist piglet on prime time for decades, putting their wallets where their ethics should be. Piers undoubtedly thought that by attacking a woman of color, he was protected by the latent racism and some little Englander's reaction to a royal marrying someone of the wrong skin tone. Does this sound personal? Oh, believe me, it is. Let's go back to July 1998 when Moron was editor of a tits and tattle rag called The Mirror and ran an entire front page consisting of a photo of a reporter under the headline "Bigger Than Hitler Defeated," screaming, "The Liar." It was Private Eye that gave him the moniker Piers Moron for his nutty attacks on my investigations. This is great. Greg Palast writing this. He said, that was the first of several front-page attacks on me as an investigative reporter for The Guardian and its Sunday paper, The Observer. I had gone undercover and secretly recorded lobbyists who detailed new Prime Minister Tony Blair's inner circle's tawdry little dealings, selling influence and government secrets to Rupert Murdoch, Goldman Sachs, Enron, and other corporate pirates. To defend his patron Blair, Morgan went on a crusade with several front-page assaults and a failed attempt to discredit my investigation. So when he called the Duchess of Sussex a liar, for me, it was déjà vu all over again. Luckily, in 1998, I had the audio tapes. Frustrated by facts, Morgan then fabricated a non-existent sex scandal. No kidding. When his fake story was exposed, the Press Complaints Commission, a group of useless pinhead press babysitters, was supposed to investigate, as they now promised to do, over his cruel attack on Markle. But they will do as they've always done in the umpteen investigations of Morgan, a pat on the wrist as he goes to his next $1 million job, because their bosses see dollar signs in Piers's lying lips. And I'm just going to stop right there.
It's pretty much the template of the GOP media.
I love Greg Palast more and more. This is the guy that has exposed what's happened in Georgia with the voter laws over the last decade or more. He's exposed Michigan, Wisconsin. He's exposed them all. Oh,
good job.
Yeah. So, in continuing with the update, so Sharon Osbourne got on the CBS daytime show The Talk and started defending Piers Morgan. Well, first she defended him on Twitter. It then spilled over into The Talk when there was a discussion about it, and co-host Cheryl Underwood basically called Sharon out on it and was nice about it. Sharon blew a gasket. Oh, how dare you call me a racist? She was cursing. They had to bleep her. They went to break. She came back and she says, how dare you? And and I guess Cheryl was getting a little upset, and Sharon Osbourne said, you don't get to cry. If anybody gets to cry, it's me. So there's been an investigation by the folks at CBS, and this has gone on for a couple of weeks. Well, earlier this week, they have decided that they are getting rid of Sharon Osbourne. Supposedly, the payoff is anywhere between $5 to $10 million. So we'll see about that. But this is not an example of cancel culture. This is an example of somebody dumbing themselves out of their job.
Yep. We see this a lot lately.
We might have another example, at least a couple of examples of this coming up real soon. Not soon enough for my liking. So, go ahead.
I'm just still waiting on these cancel culture people to start advocating for hiring felons. It's also strange to me, that they don't believe in cancel culture, yet they also lobby against hiring felons.
Yeah, well, of course they do, because felons
should be canceled.
There you go. There you go. Felons shouldn't have to ever work anymore. They shouldn't have to vote anymore. They should just be locked up for good forever. Oh.
That way the police can decide who is relevant.
And speaking, did you see that the state of New York has now legalized recreational marijuana?
Yes, I did.
And all the expungements are going to happen in New York. So come on, Michigan. We want expungements.
We already won them, didn't we? Like, what is happening?
Yeah, no.
We voted, we won, and still, this is what happens in late stage capitalism. It's called oligarchy.
Mm-hmm.
And in oligarchy, none of these systems that we're relying on are actually effective. So what we're doing is shooting ourselves in the foot and waiting around on results that aren't going to happen.
They're effective for the rich.
Right.
They're not effective for the rest of us.
Yes, and the ways they're effective for the rich are not the ways they're telling us. So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we might have two more examples of people who have dumbed themselves out of a job, but in order to do that, we have to play the appropriate music.
Stop! Hammer time!
Oh, yeah, it's hammer time. It's time to drop the hammer on the douchebag of the week, and I've loaded up the wrong clip because I should have played the double douche one because we have two winners this week.
Seems to be another common occurrence. It's been a couple of years, I tell you.
Yeah. Once again, I think we're having a lack of coffee morning around here.
Oh, yeah.
So, winner number one, and I got to play the music to go along with this, financial quote-unquote guru and conservative talk radio show host Dave Ramsey. As a former disciple of Dave Ramsey, I have been waiting for years to give him douchebag of the week, and he really has stepped into it this time. I have this story. This is Emily Sakor writing for Newsweek of all places. Listen to this. This is from Tuesday. Financial advisor and public personality Dave Ramsey reportedly disciplined at least a dozen former employees for engaging in premarital or extramarital sex, leading to their respective departures from his consulting company, Ramsey Solutions. The Tennessee-based corporation is at the center of a federal lawsuit originally brought by Caitlin O'Connor, a former administrative assistant who worked at Ramsey Solutions for years before her termination last June. O'Connor alleged that the company fired her because she was pregnant, as the decision came shortly after she requested paperwork for maternity leave. However, according to new court filings obtained by the Tennessean and referenced in a report published Monday, attorneys representing Ramsey Solutions reportedly linked O'Connor's dismissal to the fact that she engaged in premarital sex. The former assistant was not married to her partner and the child's father when she announced her pregnancy. They've been in a long-term relationship, but they didn't have that piece of paper that said husband and wife.
So where was this, was it documented that was why?
Yeah.
How stupid are you to document something like that?
I don't know.
Although it is an at-will, we're an at-will state, so technically if somebody wanted to fire you for any reason, they could do that here, right?
Well, I'll get to that in just a minute here. It's funny you mentioned that. A statement included in O'Connor's legal complaint initially filed last July read, quote, Ms. O'Connor finally had a meeting with the head of human resources and the board members and was informed that she was being terminated due to her pregnancy and for a violation of company conduct because she is not married to her partner, the baby's father. End of quote.
Oh, so it's actually listed in their conduct.
Yeah.
Wow.
The complaint continues, quote, Ramsey contends that her committed relationship and her pregnancy are a violation of its righteous living policy, end of quote. So, yes, he has a righteous living policy. Go ahead. You're ready to explode
I
over
just
there.
know I just want somebody to shoot me if I ever accidentally live in correlation with his righteous living policy, because God, do not ever let me be that righteous. Nope, that is not a label I want. I've seen you righteous people. I know what you do. I'm good.
Court documents indicated that at least 12 additional Ramsey Solutions employees were either fired or forced to resign after the company initiated disciplinary protocols against them for sexual activity while single, and at least 2 other former employees were terminated for having sex outside of their respective marriages.
Sexual activity while single. That sounds like a good time to me. I don't know. I don't know what he's so mad about.
Again, this is according to the Tennessee newspaper. No, the one that really... He fired 2 former employees for having sex outside of their marriage. And I can tell you what his reasoning is because I've listened to this guy long enough years ago. I can tell you what his reasoning is.
Please.
His reasoning is, if you can't be trusted in your marriage, how can I trust you to be part of my business? Okay, you have the floor, Katie. You're just shaking your head over there.
I just don't understand. Like, what kind of... Is he married? He's married, right?
He is married with children.
Is he married to, like, what? Oh, gosh. There is this Facebook group that I've followed. It's called The Godly Wife, I believe is what it's called. And it's constantly talking about how you have to do this to take care of your husband and do that to take care of your husband. And I'm just like, who raised these women? And who like, what cult?
Yeah.
Programmed their minds.
Christianity.
It is a cult. Because seriously... Oh my gosh. Like, we all know this man's having sex with somebody outside of his marriage. You just don't judge other people this way, and you don't control other people this way unless it's something you do. You know what I mean?
Well, he hasn't been caught doing anything like that.
It'll be a matter of time. They always get caught. Look at the priests and the reverends and the goodness.
Going back to the 80s, you just pop Jimmy Swaggart. I have sinned against you, crying on TV. Have you seen that clip?
Yes, but hold on. I need to try to find that now.
Oh, my God. Let me continue. Again, this is Newsweek reporting this, and it's now being picked up by all the other major media outlets. The company's attorney reportedly said that all employees determined to have engaged in premarital sex were terminated by Ramsey Solutions, according to the newspaper. Attorneys reportedly neglected to provide details about the company's process in determining which of its employees engaged in premarital or extramarital sex in recent court filings.
I think he just really wants to put cameras on him so he can watch the extramarital sex. I'm starting to think that's where this is going, Darren.
A webpage that appears in the Ask Dave section of Ramsey Solutions site meant to provide personalized consulting advice using a number of real-life scenarios related to employment and finance seems to confirm the company's position on these matters. The page, titled Employees Have to Follow the Moral Code, begins with a question asking whether an employer is legally permitted to terminate an employee for, quote, having an extramarital affair outside the office, end of quote. Before segueing into printed remarks attributed to Ramsey, the company's response reads, quote, Dave says yes, end of quote. It then continues, quote, sure, absolutely. We have a moral code of conduct in our office. I fire people if they have extramarital affairs, end of quote.
Does this mean I need to throw away my envelope marked prostitutes? Should I just relabel it for, like...
groceries?
Yeah,
or
Martha Wednesdays, and then the Wednesdays, I'll know that means prostitutes and not really Martha.
Ramsey's response went on to suggest that because Tennessee is an at-will state, employers are legally allowed to fire employees for any reason or without cause.
Back to the moral code. To the moral code. How immoral is that, Dave? Mm-hmm. Why are their names always Dave?
No. Let me see. Would Mary be fired for getting pregnant with Jesus outside of...
Clearly.
She never had sex, though.
And it was outside of a marriage.
Yeah.
It was a pregnancy outside of a marriage.
His response continues, quote, "They freaking work for me. This is an employment at will state, which means if I decide I don't like people with green eyes, I don't have to hire you.
See?
I don't have to keep you anymore." End of quote.
This is about power, isn't it, Dave?
Absolutely.
It's always
it is.
about power.
Newsweek reached out to Ramsey Solutions for further comment, but did not receive a reply in time for publication. I'm sure that Dave's lawyers are telling him, shut your mouth and don't say a word about this.
Well, that's okay. Dave will still never have a shot at any good vagina. So you can keep this up. Keep doing your thing, Dave.
By the way, at least one radio station has already canceled Dave Ramsey over this lawsuit that has come out.
Canceled? He was oh my gosh, has he heard?
He dumbed himself out of a radio station. Don't worry, he's got I think he's on 650 radio stations across the country or more.
Yeah, you don't spread that kind of ignorance without a whole lot of money.
He has been in the Grand Rapids market for
too long.
Decades.
He started here, right? I mean,
well, he started out of Tennessee, but Grand Rapids was one of his very first affiliates.
Yeah, he definitely, this is the base that grew him, no doubt in my mind.
Mm-hmm. So that's winner number one of Douchebag of the Week, Dave Ramsey. Winner. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I just want to add in, now that I'm thinking about it, I bet in 25 years when the CIA stuff comes out, we're going to see Dave Ramsey there too. Okay, go ahead. There was the church committee back in the day that Hoffa was going to testify to, I want to say, and it was literally called the church committee, and it was regarding, I'm going to look that up in a minute and come back with it, because this is literally history repeating itself.
Okay. Our second winner of Douchebag of the Week is Michigan GOP head Ron Weiser. Actually, I'm going to stop that. I'm going to say Republican head, because there's nothing grand about that party anymore. There never was to begin with. I have this. By the way, he wins it for two different reasons.
Okay.
So here's reason number one. This is Sergio Martinez Beltran writing for Bridge Magazine. This is dated April 1st out of Lansing. The University of Michigan Board of Regents will meet Friday, which is today, to respond to recent comments by Regent Ron Weiser in which he called female Michigan elected leaders witches and raised the prospect of violence to remove two Republican congressmen. Two people with direct knowledge of the discussions confirmed the board will debate whether to censure Weiser, who is also the chair of the Michigan Republican Party. The sources spoke to Bridge Magazine on the condition of anonymity, saying they were not authorized to speak publicly on the matter. Hold on, stop the presses. We have an update that came out after we finished recording. This is David Eggert writing for the Associated Press out of Lansing on April 2nd. The University of Michigan's board has censured a Republican regent who called Michigan's female Democratic leaders witches, whom the GOP would prepare for a burning at the stake in the 2022 election. Ron Weiser, who also chairs the state Republican Party, said Friday he takes full responsibility for his comments, but won't quit despite the board's call for his resignation. So there's the update, folks. Ron Weiser has been censured by the University of Michigan Board of Regents. He says he will not quit. And now back to the show. The board's move comes a week after Weiser was recorded calling Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel, and Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson witches. Speaking to the North Oakland Republican Club on Thursday, the wealthy real estate magnate also said he is recruiting Republican challengers to soften up the three Democrats so they're, quote, ready for the burning at the stake, end of quote. At that same meeting, Weiser was asked by Republican activists whether he'd support primary challenges against Congressman Peter Meyer of Grand Rapids and Fred Upton of St. Joseph. Both men were among a few Republican House members to vote to impeach Donald Trump in January. Weiser responded, quote, other than assassination, I have no other way, end of quote, of kicking them out of office, quote, other than voting them out, end of quote. His comments drew widespread criticism, including from Whitmer, Nessel, and Benson, as well as some members of the University of Michigan's Board of Regents and university officials.
I'm calling on all of them to stop their violence. Like, all of them. I'm so over it. The comments like that, the comments regarding wages and health care, and it's violent on both sides. And late stage oligarchy, late stage capitalism.
But I haven't seen any
systems to fix it.
But I haven't seen any progressives calling for people to be assassinated.
The Trump thing, I think people were definitely questioning how he was still in office, and I definitely saw some progressives going, "How has nobody done this yet?" And I mean, we were wondering. And nobody called for it. I'm not going to say it, which I think is definitely But at the same time, they're like, somebody asked him, "How do you get him out of office?" That would be the only way he could technically do it on his own. Not that it would be legal or ethical.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, we can't just point out violence on one side when we're violent too. We are in a million other ways.
But not to the degree that the Republicans and conservatives are. That's why I call them violent conservatives for a reason, because they're all violent.
I think we're getting more and more violent, and I think that there's more and more Republicans and conservatives running as Dems. So I think that's where we're at.
Yeah, because the party won't say no.
Well, look at Grand Rapids.
Here.
Try to find one Democrat in Grand Rapids. It's a Dem. Who?
You lived this.
Yes, it's literally Rosalind Bliss, not a Democrat. She's a Republican. Yep. Monica Sparks, not a Democrat. She's a Republican.
Literally was
still a delegate for the Republican Party, endorsed by Right to Life.
Yeah.
Like, that's violent, in my opinion, But instead, we're out here going, if we make it a Democrat-Republican thing, Republicans are going, sweet, we'll just make Republicans Democrats then. We'll still win.
Because, again, the Democrats are I'll just say it, they're too stupid to say
they're
no.
They're greedy.
That's
greedy.
Even better.
They can be bought. That's the
That's
problem.
Even
they're
better.
all being bought. It's disgusting. Late stage oligarchy.
If they're not oligarchs, they want to be oligarchs.
Yep, and they will be eventually, or they will be irrelevant.
They want to lick the boot, and
That's it. The people willing to lick the boots with the boots all the way down their throats are the ones that have power right now, and this is what we're seeing. What they're doing with it.
But this should be a lot more concerning to voters out here. This is the other reason why Ron Weiser gets douchebag of the week. This is Craig Mauger writing for the Detroit News. This is dated March 26 out of Lansing. Michigan Republicans are crafting plans to work around Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer to make changes to the battleground states' voting laws after their losses in the 2020 election. Ron Weiser, chairman of the Michigan Republican Party, told the North Oakland Republican Club Thursday night, so it's the same meeting, that the party wants to blend together bills proposed in the House and Senate for a petition initiative. If Republicans gather enough signatures, which would be about 340,000, the Republican-controlled legislature could then approve the proposal into law without Whitmer being able to veto it.
And here's the thing. They've got the data to get anything they want, to get the signatures for anything they want. They can manipulate people with data now. This is violence. This is literally stripping democracy, right? It's thwarting the system. It's manipulating our private information and using it against us. It's all violent. It's all violent. And the problem is half the companies doing it are being held up by the Democratic Party too. Mm-hmm. So we're shooting ourselves in the foot, and we're fighting against ourselves here. And until we see what the real problem is and take on the real powers, we're done. Mm-hmm. We're done. And there is no coming back from this.
Exactly. Senate Republicans unveiled 39 bills Wednesday to require applicants for absentee ballots to present a copy of identification, overhaul large counties' canvassing boards, and bar Democratic Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson from sending absentee ballot applications to voters unless they specifically request the applications. Again, this is just 3 of 39 things they want to do. And this is happening all across the country. Mm-hmm. We just saw what happened in Georgia.
And while they're doing this, they're increasing the military, they're increasing the police, they're building secure prison buildings that might be being used for hospitals or med centers or mental health facilities or whatever else they want to call it right now. They can turn those into a prison real quick.
By the way, according to the Detroit News, on December 17th of 2020, a ballot committee called Secure MI Vote was formed in Michigan. According to the campaign finance disclosures, the group's treasurer is Paul Cordes, who is Ron Weiser's chief of staff. So there you go, folks. Republicans can't win fair and square, so they will cheat, they will lie, they will steal at every opportunity they have.
And they're not just Republicans. What these are the richest white supremacists on the planet.
Bingo.
Using the American government to uphold white supremacy, which, whether you're white or not, it's going to affect you and it's going to hurt.
Absolutely. So to Dave Ramsey and Ron Weiser, we have this message for you.
Don't be a douchebag.
That's right. You both need to stop being control freak douchebags. Because that's all that it is. Like you said, it's all about control.
Yep.
Republicans want to control all the legislature.
They want to control women. They want to control children. They want to control their best friends, their best friends' parents.
And Dave Ramsey wants to control his employees.
Yep.
Yeah.
Ego and power. It's every time.
It's absolutely disgusting is what it is. Something else that we should probably talk about. We didn't mention this before. I didn't talk to you about this before we went on the air, but I have this story. We have a bunch of places for you to boycott. This is Walter Bragman, Andrew Perez, and David Serrata writing for Jacobin Magazine. Listen to this, folks. The parent company of some of America's largest fast food chains is claiming credit for convincing Congress to exclude a $15 minimum wage from the recent COVID relief bill, according to internal documents reviewed by the Daily Poster. The company, which is owned by a private equity firm named after an Ayn Rand character, also says it is now working to thwart new union rights legislation. So this is Inspire Brands is the company. They own Jimmy John's, which you should have been boycotting anyway because Jimmy John likes to fly over to Africa and kill endangered animals. Mm-hmm. He's an asshole. Arby's, Sonic, Buffalo Wild Wings, and Dunkin' Donuts. All owned by this big company. They just bought Dunkin' a few months ago. The company's boast comes just a few months after a government report found that some of its chains had among the highest percentage of workers relying on food stamps. Inspire Brands, again, which owns Jimmy John's. I'll just repeat it. They own Jimmy John's, Arby's, Sonic, Buffalo Wild Wings, plus recently acquired Dunkin' Donuts for $11.3 billion in November. On Thursday, sent employees and franchisees a review of its government lobbying activity that highlighted its success in keeping the $15 minimum wage out of Democrats' American Rescue Plan, the COVID-19 relief bill Joe Biden signed earlier this month.
Yeah, that reminds me of it looks like Amazon is hiring off-duty police now to go after union organizers. So these corporations are getting real concerned about having to actually pay their workers the value or anything near the value of their labor.
They're getting desperate.
Yep. And there's the second story I read today about companies hiring off-duty uniformed police officers. Like, how is this okay?
If you're
we
off
bought
duty,
their uniforms, so why are they using them to make money in another position? Number
exactly.
one. Number two, they're using the city and my name when they're wearing their uniform, and they're doing their job in my name, so they shouldn't be allowed to do that unless they're on duty. This is crossing so many lines. I'm not okay with it. It's scary. And if that's happening there, it's got to be already here and going to be becoming more frequent.
Absolutely. The report reads, quote, "We were successful in our advocacy efforts to remove the Raise the Wage Act, which would have increased the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour and eliminated the tip credit," end of quote. Further down, the report notes the company's ongoing lobbying campaign in the Senate against the PRO Act, which recently passed the House and contains a laundry list of organized labor's goals, such as eliminating right-to-work laws and banning mandatory company-sponsored meetings that are designed to discourage union activity. Kind of what Amazon has been doing
exactly.
besides hiring uniformed off-duty police officers.
Yep.
And by the way, just about every major company engages in this anti-union activity.
Yep.
Home Depot, Lowe's, Walmart.
And they can keep it up. They can do it all they want. But people see what's happening right now. I love it when I see online and somebody goes and posts a job for 10, 11, 12 bucks an hour. And what do you see? You see 25 comments going, laugh out loud. Nope, I'll do it for 3 times that much. Are you crazy? Like, people are just not having it anymore. Mm-hmm. And so there's going to come a point where we all decide it's easier for us to sit down and die than it is to work ourselves to death.
Absolutely.
So they can make those decisions, I guess.
The document said, quote, under this proposed rule, franchisors could be considered the direct employer of the franchise owners in their system, as well as the restaurant workers, those an owner's employee, taking away the independence of small business owners, end of quote. I love how they love to start spewing independence, freedom.
Small business? What small business owners? You obliterated small businesses. There's none left.
Yeah. Yeah, Arby's has how many locations across the country? Sonic has how many? Dunkin' Donuts has how many?
Look around. Our small businesses are gone. They're gone. So doing anything in the name of small business is a joke now. That's why they're doing it, because they know they don't have to worry about some small business. They don't exist.
Mm-hmm. One Inspire Brands worker told the Daily Poster, quote, you get the impression that they're actively spitting in our eye, saying, yes, we work to suppress wages of our employees, and we're just going to brazenly tell you. I really do think that a line was crossed. You're just going to brazenly tell your employees, not only did we work to kill wages, but going forward, we're also going to make sure that the PRO Act doesn't pass either.
Absolutely.
End of quote.
And do you know what else they're doing at the same time? They've got people starting organizations like Division United, right? Mm-hmm. Division United is like a property or a neighborhood organization that is supposedly going to help increase economic opportunity along Division Avenue, right? But and if you look at their objectives, what they're telling us is basically that they are going to give more businesses opportunity, and then that they cannot guarantee that people will not be displaced. So they are promising that you will have access to jobs. So what they're telling us is that they are going to make sure our housing is unaffordable, but make sure that you have somewhere where you can ride a bus and get to work and work for them. So you're not going to have a home to go back to, but they will keep you working. Mm-hmm. That's the future. They're spending all of their money to not only keep you from making money, but to keep you from having a home, to keep you from having electricity, heat, groceries. And this is who you're going to work for? Starve yourself if you're going to do that. That's where I'm at right now. Just starve yourself. Don't let them do it.
Yeah. Inspire Brands did not immediately respond to a request for comment. During the 2020 campaign, Democrats pledged to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, which would boost the wages of 32 million workers nationwide, according to a recent report by the Economic Policy Institute. Well, let me stop there. Not all Democrats pledged this.
Exactly.
However, efforts to include a $15 minimum wage in Biden's pandemic aid bill failed after the Senate parliamentarian advised Democrats such a hike should not be passed by budget reconciliation, and Vice President Kamala Harris declined to use her authority to override the decision because they're serving the oligarchs.
Exactly.
Inspire Brands' success in eliminating the minimum wage hike from the bill follows Dunkin' Brands' then CEO Nigel Travis saying in 2015 that a $15 an hour wage would be, quote, absolutely outrageous, end of quote. At the time, unions noted that Travis was being paid more than $4,000 every hour.
And this is right about the time that the UAW and MEA was organizing against Bernie Sanders. Mm-hmm. So the Democratic Party, the MEA, and the UAW, all of them together. Yes. So let's just keep in mind that the left is working against us at this point, too. That's late-stage capitalism. That's oligarchy.
Yep. The minimum wage defeat also follows an October 2020 report from the Government Accountability Office finding that low-wage workers at Dunkin' Donuts, Arby's, and Sonic were among those relying most heavily on food stamps in states where those franchises operate. In 2019, some Sonic workers walked off the job in Ohio in protest of low pay. While paying many of its workers below $15, Inspire Brands franchises are generating $26 billion in annual revenue and enriching top executives. The founder of Jimmy John's, which has been accused of busting worker union drives, recently boasted on his website that he was named one of the planet's wealthiest men. You know what I would love to see?
Sounds like a bullseye to me.
You know what I would love to see? The next time Jimmy John goes over to Africa, why don't you give the elephant a gun and send him after Jimmy? Let's reverse roles here.
Maybe
he
just doesn't make it to Africa.
Yeah. In the year before Inspire acquired his company, Dunkin' Brands CEO was paid millions and then made millions more when the deal closed. Because that's how things
cops
work.
love donuts, let's be honest.
In government filings that year, Dunkin' Brands warned investors about the prospect of low-wage workers being paid better. The company wrote, quote, "A significant number of our franchisees' food service employees are paid at rates related to the U.S. federal minimum wage and applicable minimum wages in foreign jurisdictions, and past increases in the U.S. federal minimum wage and foreign jurisdiction minimum wage have increased labor costs, as would future such increases. Any increases in labor costs might result in franchisees inadequately staffing restaurants. Understaffed restaurants could reduce sales at such restaurants, decrease royalty payments, and adversely affect our brand." End of quote. Yeah, right there's what they're worried about. They're worried about their royalty payments.
Absolutely. 1,000,000%. Every time. It's so...
The company also bragged that, quote, "None of our employees are represented by a labor union, and we believe our relationships with our employees are healthy." End of quote. By the way, Inspire Brands is majority owned by Rourke Capital. They're a $23 billion private equity giant named after the self-centered protagonist of the Ayn Rand novel The Fountainhead, which is considered a foundational conservative text for the defense of billionaires and economic inequality.
Yeah, they were recently just canonized by the Acton group in Grand Rapids.
Oh, lovely.
That was Ayn Rand, actually. That was just propped up by them.
Lovely. The firm says on its website, quote, "Our name signifies our admiration for the qualities embodied by Howard Rourke. We are committed to being a good partner in good times and an even better partner in bad times." End of quote. You know what they should call themselves? Maybe they should call themselves Gordon Gekko. Really, they should. Greed is good. Or just call themselves Greed is Good Company. Mm-hmm. You know, at least be honest about it.
That's the only virtue they have. That's it. The only virtue.
Donors from Rourke-linked companies delivered more than $800,000 of campaign contributions in the 2020 election cycle, mostly to Republicans, according to data compiled by Open Secrets, which is basically the Federal Elections Commission. Several state and local retirement systems have invested public employees' retirement savings in the Rourke funds involved in Inspire Brands' takeover of Dunkin' Brands last year, including the Oregon State Treasury, the Maryland State Retirement and Pension System, and the Los Angeles City Employees Retirement System. So we have the government investing our money into these conservative companies that don't give a f*** about their employees.
Yep.
And want to keep everybody poor.
Yep.
This is the textbook definition of shooting ourselves in the foot.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I see it every housing commission meeting. I go look at these bank registries, and it's literally just handing money to private companies that are just run by conservative Republicans in town. It's disgusting.
Yeah. I want to switch topics because if I keep talking about this, I'm going to have high blood pressure really bad. I want to get to this. I told you a little bit about what's happening to Matt Gaetz, the Republican congressman.
Yes.
So Matt Gaetz is apparently being investigated by the Department of Justice and the FBI for a sex trafficking investigation. Wow. This is you can't make this stuff up, folks. This is Dara Gregorian and Tom Winter writing for NBC News, dated March 31st. A sex trafficking investigation of Representative Matt Gaetz, Republican of Florida, began with an inquiry into an associate of his who's awaiting trial on trafficking, stalking, and identity fraud charges. The associate, Joel Micah Greenberg, who Gaetz once suggested should run for Congress in Florida, was charged with additional counts Wednesday stemming from his 3 years as an elected county tax official. Greenberg has pleaded not guilty to the trafficking, stalking, and identity fraud charges. He is scheduled to be arraigned on the wire fraud and money laundering charges next week. So basically, the allegation is that Gaetz has paid a 17-year-old girl for sex and even transported her across state lines for said purpose. And by the way, Gaetz has talked about retiring from Congress so that he can go work for, I believe, Newsmax. He wants to become a conservative talking head.
So I got a lot of questions about this. First of all, Greenberg, stalking and identity theft along with trafficking, that's a really weird combination of charges. What did he do? That sounds like he sounds like a sadistic person that really messed with somebody, and I want to know how.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, in comparison to that, it sounds like Gaetz' name is bigger, but his story is smaller. He just got charged with one count of paying an underage girl and then with transporting her across the state lines.
But not, well, he hasn't even been charged yet. They're
okay.
they're still investigating. And by the way, this Department of Justice investigation began under Bill Barr. So
So yeah, I'm always super sketch about any kind of charges when it comes to human trafficking because it's almost always for public attention. The number one reason for human trafficking is exploiting labor, right? Mm-hmm. It's generally people getting Central Americans across the border and telling them that if you work for me, I'll get you over here for this amount of money if you work it off when you get here. And then those people end up working for like $2 an hour. And that is the majority of human trafficking cases. When you hear the word, you think of sex trafficking. Yep. And when you think of sex trafficking, you think of old men selling little girls. Yep. What you don't think about are the sex workers caught in the middle of that are sometimes 18 years old, trying to survive, and maybe a guy that they asked for a ride, and maybe it was 5 minutes down the street, and maybe they crossed a border. So, I mean, when you see stories like this, it's really easy, especially when you know the person is a denigrate like this, right? But keep in mind that it's not always like that across the board. And sometimes you can use those headlines and make people look really, really bad when maybe the situation wasn't like that.
Yeah. And we were just about out of time. There's one final item I do want to discuss. Might as well play the appropriate music for this. We would be remiss if we did not acknowledge the passing earlier this week of Watergate mastermind G. Gordon Liddy, the former radio talk show host who one time on a show in discussing the Waco massacre said that if ATF agents are coming at you with guns to aim for the head because they're wearing body armor, and went to break yelling, "Kill the sons of bitches." He did this.
Rest in peace, my friend.
Yeah, I about fell over when he did that. and I listened to it live when it happened.
Oh, wow.
So this was some scary stuff. Oh, boy. So what a week it has been. And unfortunately, I've got a feeling we're going to have a lot more to talk about next week as well. So
yeah, it's going to be a sunny weekend, so enjoy. I would say have a happy Sunday. I'll say that.
Yeah. Yep. Tell you what, folks, we'll be back next week. In the meantime, I'm Darren Gibson.
I'm Katy Steele.
For Jack Prince and Kristen Cook, please support independent media and the First Amendment.
The stations that carry Southpaws do not necessarily share the opinions expressed on the show. Southpaws is protected by the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and is copyrighted by Big D Entertainment. All rights reserved.